Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about one of the biggest and most mysterious events from ancient times, the Bronze Age collapse. This wasn't just one empire falling, or a few cities getting destroyed. It was a huge disaster where many of the strongest civilizations around the Mediterranean fell apart between 1250 and 1150 BCE. Cities were ruined, entire cultures disappeared, trade between places stopped, and even writing systems were lost. It was a time of destruction and confusion like nothing people had seen before. For over 100 years, experts have tried to figure out exactly what caused this collapse, but no one knows for sure. Some think it was because of big natural disasters like earthquakes. Others believe climate change caused droughts and food shortages. There are also ideas about rebellions from people within the civilizations, and attacks from outsiders, especially a mysterious group called the Sea Peoples. On top of all this, the system that kept trade and politics working might have just fallen apart, causing everything to crash. After this collapse, the region entered what historians call a Dark Age. Bronze, the metal people used for tools and weapons, was replaced by iron. Trade and contact between different countries almost stopped completely. Life got harder, and things like art, buildings, and everyday life weren't as advanced as they had been before. Compared to how things were during the Bronze Age, this new time was tough. The Bronze Age, which lasted from around 3300 to 1200 BCE, is called that because people mainly used bronze for tools and weapons. But it wasn't just about metal. During this time, people made huge advances in culture, language, technology, religion, art, and trade. It was a time of growth and progress. The pyramids of Giza in Egypt and the Temple of Karnak were built during this period. In Mesopotamia, people invented the wheel and writing and built cities that became part of the world's first empire, the Akkadian Empire, led by a king named Sargon of Akkad. In other places, like Anatolia, the Hittite people built the city of Hattusa, and the Hittite Empire was very successful. The kingdom of Mitanni stretched from northern Iraq to parts of what is now Turkey. Cyprus had its own unique culture. Cities like Ugarit in the Phoenician region were thriving, and Greece had the strong Mycenaean civilization. All these places were connected. By around 1350 BCE, the major powers, Assyria, Babylonia, Egypt, the Hittite Empire, and Mitanni, were all linked through trade and diplomacy. Today, scholars call them the Club of Great Powers. Because of these connections, people had better lives. There was more trade, knowledge was shared, and the kings of these lands respected and worked with each other. Ancient letters called the Amarna letters show how they communicated and kept their alliances strong. It was a time of peace and progress for many. But starting in the late 1200s BCE, things began to fall apart. The careful balance between these powers broke down. Only Egypt survived, and even it wasn't as strong as before. And one big question is, what caused it? For a long time, people thought the collapse happened because of a chain reaction. They believed earthquakes hit cities, then droughts and bad harvests caused food shortages, which led to unrest and rebellion. On top of that, large groups of people, possibly fleeing from these disasters, moved into new lands and messed up trade and peace. This mix of problems seemed to cause civilizations around the Mediterranean to fall apart. But now, experts believe it's not that simple. These civilizations had survived earthquakes, invasions, and other struggles before without totally collapsing. Instead, researchers like Eric H. Klein, Bernard Knapp, Stuart Manning, and Brandon Drake think these disasters may have all happened close together, making it impossible for people to recover. Klein called this a perfect storm of calamities. Each disaster alone might have been manageable, but when they hit all at once, it was just too much. One problem set off another, and the whole system crumbled like falling dominoes. Figuring out exactly when this happened is tough. Historians often use the year 1177 BCE as a rough marker, like how 476 CE is sometimes used to mark the fall of Rome. But in both cases, the truth is more complicated. When it comes to specific causes, There are a few main ideas. Natural disasters were common in the Mediterranean, and earthquakes probably played a role. Scholar Robert Drews found 47 sites destroyed during this time, but it's hard to tell if those were caused by earthquakes, invasions, or revolts. Some experts also suggest earthquake storms, which are a series of quakes happening one after another, explaining the widespread destruction. Climate change is another theory. Archaeologist David Kanievsky argued that long droughts caused food shortages and economic problems, forcing people to move or invade new lands. Evidence from the Sorek cave in Israel shows rainfall decreasing up until 1150 BCE, which may have made things worse by ruining crops and causing famine. Internal rebellion is another possible cause. During the reign of Ramesses III, workers at Deir el-Medina went on strike because they weren't paid, marking the first recorded labor strike in history. Tomb robbing also increased, with stolen goods being traded for food. The city of Hazor may have fallen due to a rebellion within, likely fueled by hunger and economic problems. Invasions by mysterious sea peoples were once seen as the main reason for the collapse. These groups, whose origins are unclear, attacked many Mediterranean civilizations between 1276 and 1178 BCE. Egyptian records describe the sea peoples arriving with families and belongings, suggesting they weren't just raiders, but entire communities looking for new homes. While Egyptian rulers like Ramesses II, Meremptah, and Ramesses III managed to fight them off, the damage was already done elsewhere. Trade problems also played a big role. Mediterranean trade was very connected, so when one major trading partner fell, the whole system started to break down. Wealthy cities relied on imported goods, and when those shipments stopped, economies collapsed. Debt slavery, land disputes, and corruption only made things worse. In the end, no single cause explains the Bronze Age collapse. The mix of earthquakes, climate change, invasions, internal struggles, and trade breakdowns all worked together to create a chain reaction that overwhelmed the region. Each civilization faced its own problems, and what caused one kingdom to fall may have been different from what caused another to fail. When it was all over, the Hittite Empire was gone, Ugarit was in ruins, and the once great Mycenaean civilization had disappeared. Cities throughout the Levant declined, and Cyprus faced hard times. Only Egypt survived, but it came out much weaker. The powerful club of great powers was reduced to memories, remembered in myths and stories passed down for generations. Yet from this collapse, new cultures rose. The Phoenician alphabet replaced lost writing systems like Linear B, and bronze craftsmanship continued in Egypt's third intermediate period. The Mediterranean world slowly adapted and rebuilt itself.